Lee Fong is an investigative, independent journalist. I've followed Lee since his days at thinkprogress.org as a reporter there. When I was producing for Tom Hartman, we often got on Lee Fong when he was a reporter at thinkprogress.org. Lee has since left Think Progress and now is a reporting fellow with the Investigative Fund at the Nation Institute. He covers politics, he covers conservative movements and lobbying. Lee Fong's work has resulted in multiple calls for hearings in Congress and the FCC. He's the author of the book The Machine, a field guide to the resurgent right, a recently published book on how the right-wing political infrastructure was rebuilt after President Obama's 2008 election. You can find out more about the book at themachinebook.com. And it is my honor to welcome Lee Fong to the program. Lee, it's great to speak with you.
Hey, Jacob. Thank you so much for having me.
I am a big fan of you and a big fan of progressive media. I watch Bill Moyers and Company on a regular basis every week, and thought it was super cool that Bill Moyers did a little highlight of your article, and I was a little disappointed Bill didn't interview you, so I wanted to give you a chance to come on and tell us about your new article. Obama administration's TPP trade officials received hefty bonuses from big banks over at republicreport.org. Lee, tell us about this article.
Well, Jacob, thanks again for having me on. republicreport.org is my new relaunched investigative blog, and congratulations to your show. We've been looking deep into the revolving door, the movement between the private sector into the public sector and back from the public sector back to K Street and other corporations. This particular piece looked at how two of the officials tapped by the Obama administration to lead the Trans-Pacific Partnership negotiations, how both of those individuals came from large banks with a financial stake in the TPP deal. Not only that, if you look at the financial disclosure forms filed by both of these individuals, they each received large bonus payments as they left the banks to be tapped by the Obama administration. One of those individuals, Michael Froman, he's the trade ambassador. He joined the administration in 2009, and as Citigroup was collapsing, as they were losing lots of money and had to be bailed out by the taxpayer, Citigroup gave Michael Froman over $4 million as a special bonus payment when he joined the Obama administration. And another individual, Stefan Selig, who was nominated last year by the Obama administration to be the Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade, another TPP-related job. He was given a $9 million bonus by Bank of America. Now, this is significant because the banks have a lot to gain from this deal, and ethics experts have said that these bonuses represent a significant conflict of interest because clearly when folks are working even in a public service type job, they're going to remember these bonuses.
Yeah, has anyone reported on this so far yet? Or Lee, you're like the first one to come out with this, aren't you?
We broke the story. Some folks have scrutinized Michael Froman in the past because he has been in the administration for the last 5 years, but not in context of the TPP. And for Stefan Selig, no one's reported any of this information, so we were the first.
Can you, Lee, can you elaborate on more on this, the revolving door between Wall Street and the government, and how these financial executives are actually getting a bigger golden parachute bonus if they leave Wall Street to go work as a Wall Street regulator in the government?
Yeah, this is an interesting dynamic that I've reported on for a little while, but it's a much bigger scandal that deserves greater scrutiny. So a lot of the large banks, we know from their 8K filings, because they're publicly traded, they report their executive contract information. Well, they actually have a clause in their contract that says if one of their executives leaves their bank for a high-level government job or a regulation type job with the government, they are entitled to special stock options, special financial rewards if they leave the bank and enter those types of positions. Now that has essentially professionalized and normalized the revolving door if they are actually encouraging their executives to burrow into government. Now, the banks aren't the only firms engaged in this activity. If you look at the 8K filing for Northrop Grumman, there's a very similar clause that encourages their executives to enter government work, to go to the Department of Defense, to go to Congress and work in these high-level staff positions. If you look at financial disclosure forms across the board, it looks like this phenomenon is pretty widespread, although it's very difficult to tell because if you look at the financial disclosure forms, they don't say the exact circumstances from which the bonus was awarded, but you do see these, $800,000 million or $1.5 million bonuses that look very suspicious from many different executives coming from all different types of industries, including many lobbying firms. Now, I've talked to ethics experts, and they've called this a bounty, for an executive to burrow into government and to do a certain deed that benefits their former employers. And then often once they move back through the revolving door, they spent 2 or 3 years in government, they've done something that helps corporations or their former employers, they then move back into the private sector, and in many cases they're then given another bonus. So the idea that folks are moving through the revolving door, that they're taking these jobs that pay much less, these bonuses help cushion their lifestyle so they don't have to move from Potomac or stop. They can still live like multimillionaires even if they're working in public sector jobs.
If you're just joining us, we're speaking with investigative reporter Lee Fong. He's a reporting fellow with the Investigative Fund at the Nation Institute and reporting at republicreport.org, and the author of his new book, The Machine, A Field Guide to the Resurgent Right. Lee, how is this not illegal? It sounds criminal.
This is a good question, and this is the kind of big loophole. You think of a tin pot third world dictatorship where the top government officials are just taking $1 million bribes in a briefcase. Well, that's illegal here in America, clearly, but it is legal to receive a bonus before you enter government or after you enter government. So this is a pretty substantial loophole that allows private sector interests to literally give multi-million-dollar awards to those entering government. Now, if there is an explicit quid pro quo that, someone made some agreement and that's why they're receiving the money, that they're going to go into government and do some type of corrupt activity, unfortunately, the FBI and the DOJ hasn't shown the political will to really investigate these types of crimes. The President Obama campaigned very vigorously in 2008 on clamping down on the role of lobbyists, but we haven't seen the DOJ going after any high-level corruption while he's in office. The DOJ's corruption unit has gone after state assemblymen, mayors, state senators, like here in California, Ron Calderon is indicted. But they haven't gone after these high-level corporate lobbyists or members of Congress, for that matter. And partially, I think this is a matter of resources. The DOJ hasn't put resources into this type of prosecution. But of course, there's also prosecutorial discretion. I don't think there's political will.
A lot of people get wary of the F word, but I think this is the literal definition of fascism. That F word, fascism, is the merger of corporations and government. And I mean, isn't this like the foxes guarding the hen house? To what extent can the foxes guard the hen house?
Well, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the term, but I will say the foxes guarding the hen house is an apt description. Look, we haven't had any investigations of criminal activity related to the financial crisis. We haven't looked into, like I mentioned, the high-level corruption that is probably going on right now. And I think it's unfortunate. And you look through the major regulatory agencies, look at how Obama's reshuffled the CFTC, which is supposed to oversee derivatives. Look at the new leadership at the SEC. Many of these are bankers or banking executive lawyers. It's unfortunate that President Obama hasn't taken or hasn't reached out, cast a wider net, found more public interest type individuals to help him with his administration. He's bringing many of these industry folks in. Some of them, you could argue, simply have more experience since they understand the banking industry or the defense contracting industry. Maybe they'll be more aggressive. But time and time again, you bring in folks who are part of this industry, and they are very sympathetic to industry and are more likely to seek bigger giveaways to those industries.
We're speaking with investigative reporter Lee Fong. His new article, Obama Administration's TPP trade officials received hefty bonuses from big banks, over at republicreport.org. And Bill Moyers mentioned it over the weekend on Moyers and Company on public broadcasting television. Lee, can you get back to how the TPP fits in here?
You know, the TPP is not just a trade deal. Leaked texts of the negotiating documents, which have been done in secret, but they've been leaked by WikiLeaks and Public Citizen, the advocacy group, has obtained some of these and helped explain them to the press. Like other trade deals, the TPP will contain an investor state provision, and that basically allows corporations to take entire governments to foreign tribunals and challenge proposed regulations. So this TPP deal will allow corporations to challenge environmental rules that are enacted by certain member companies of the TPP deal. When it comes to banks, there are a number of financial regulations that, excuse me, my computer.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, it's all right.
Will allow banks to challenge certain financial regulations. So, for example, you know, we used to have Glass-Steagall, so-called firewalls between financial institutions. Mm-hmm. If other countries attempt to enact these types of rules, at least the draft TPP negotiation documents show that banks will actually be able to take those governments to court and knock down those proposed regulations, other regulations on derivatives, on capital outflows. So these banks will have special powers that can supersede the democratic right of any of these countries to enact regulations on their own home industries.
In the minute or so we've got left with you, Lee, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. Your time is much more valuable doing the investigative journalism that you do. What is the most important take-home part of this article that you want folks to really get?
Well, look, the traditional media is not spending much time at all on the TPP. So I would say the biggest take-home is to just pay closer attention, dig what you can on the internet, find out about the deal, because at least broadcast and cable media is not covering the negotiations. Negotiations will go on for the next couple of months, but pay close attention because this has huge ramifications, not just in terms of trade, but as I mentioned, also on all different forms of regulation.
Lee Fong, investigative journalist reporting with the Nation Institute and republicreport.org. Those are the best websites for folks to find your work at, right, Lee?
Yeah, that's right. Thank you so much for mentioning them, Jacob, and thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you so much for your time. Keep up the great work. I hope we can do it again soon.
Sounds great. Take care, Jacob.
Thank you, Lee. You as well. Lee Fong, investigative journalist, reporting fellow with the Investigative Fund at the Nation Institute and republicreport.org, covering money and politics and conservative movements and lobbying. And Lee is doing some great, brilliant investigative reporting. And when I saw that even Bill Moyers took 5-10 minutes over the weekend to mention that article, I said, you know what? I wish Bill would have interviewed Lee. And I said, well, I don't host the Bill Moyers show, but I am guest hosting Nicole Sandler Show, so we can get Lee on Nicole's show and talk about it for a couple of minutes. That was a fascinating conversation.